It took me 7 months to buy my first property. I consumed over 200 hours of content, I spent £25,000 on courses, and I spent a total of 41 days of my life just viewing properties, and I still got it wrong. Now, I can't go back and tell myself how to do it differently, but I did want to sit down and make this video for the 22-year-old version of myself who's just getting started in property. Because over the years, I've been buying more and more properties, and it was essential for me to build out a simple system and process that could make every single deal of mine as simple as possible and ensure that everyone that I did was a banger. So if you're thinking about starting investing in property in 2025, I've got my 31 steps here that you need to follow. Now, step number 1, I actually have so many people that come up to me and get this wrong, okay? Most people go into property completely blind. I've had people come to me and I've said to them, what is your dream? What's your goal? Where do you want to be? And they're like, I just want to make money. And it is so unhelpful to say that, because it doesn't give you any clear idea of what it is you want to achieve. And in order to actually get somewhere, you need to know what the destination is to begin with. So how are you supposed to get into property? How are you supposed to be effective in your purchasing if you don't even know where you want to be? So figure out your destination, and then we'll be able to work out the best route to help you get there. So I'd say sit down with a pen and paper and write out, where do you want to be in the next 5 years? What do you actually want to have achieved? What do you want your life to look like? Step number 2 is working out your budget, your total budget. So I'm talking, how much money have you got? How much is in the bank? How much have you got in savings? And then also have a conversation with a broker, a finance broker, to work out how much it is that you can borrow and what your ability to borrow looks like. Combine the two, and that is your total pot to start shopping with. The next one is choose a strategy that aligns with the end goal from step number 1. So start with the end in mind, work out what it is that you want your life to look like, and figure out the strategy that best fits you getting there. Don't fall into the trap of figuring out what is the best way to get there as quick as possible, because you can end up compromising on the actual achievement itself. I have people come to me sometimes and they'll say that they want to make £5,000 a month and they want to have it as passive as possible, and that is their dream. Now, when they come to me, they often come to me with things like, I want to do service accommodation, I want to do things like HMOs, because it will get me to that £5,000 a month number as quickly as possible. And whilst that is probably true, it doesn't achieve the second part of their goal, which is they want it to be as passive as possible. So for a lot of people, if you actually want to make it passive, you want to be looking at things like residential buy-to-lets, or even potentially exploring things like commercial property. It might not be the fastest way of you getting £5,000 a month, but it's a sure way to get you £5,000 a month eventually, and it will remain as passive as it possibly can from a residential investment perspective. The next one is choose your location, and choose it wisely. Think about things like your budget, the distance that you want to be traveling. Are you happy to travel very far from where you live? Are you willing to work with sources in a location because you're not in the area that you want to be investing in? Can you invest locally to you? Next thing is things like your long-term growth, capital growth. Do you want to invest in areas that have proven track record of capital growth? And also you want to be looking at things like cash flow. What's the tenant profile? How much people can be paying? Are the rental yields any good? All those things come into the question of what location, what area you're going to be investing in. After that, you want to be looking for properties that match your criteria. I mean, platforms like Rightmove, everybody overlooks them and thinks, well, if it's on Rightmove, it can't be a good deal. We get so many of our deals from Rightmove because so many people just overlook it and don't realize that just the simple stuff of looking on Rightmove and Zoopla and the obvious sort of platforms, there are some great deals to be had. So just find properties that match your criteria. Next, you want to call the agents. Once you've found a property that you like the look of, give the agent a call and ask them questions like, is it vacant or is it tenanted? Is it freehold or leasehold? If there are tenants in there, how much are they paying? How long have they been there? Is there any movement on the price? Is there any structural issues that we're not aware of? Just all these sort of questions that you want to be asking. One of the mistakes that a lot of people come to me with is they go to a lot of viewings and then it turns out the property's a waste of time. And actually, the more questions you can ask up front, the better informed you can be as to, 1, whether you even book a viewing in the first place, 2, you just become more informed about the deal as a whole. To then move you on to the next step, which is booking a viewing. When you go around the property, make sure if there's anything that you're not sure about, any concerns about cracks or damp or whatever, anything that if you're not aware of it yourself, if you're a bit nervous yourself, take a picture of it, take a video of it, and then afterwards you can move on to the next step, which is send it to a builder. Send your videos, your floor plans, whatever, to a builder who can give you a rough idea of what things are going to cost. I mean, one of the things that you could do is just get the builder to actually view it as well. if the builder can go around and have a look and be in the space, they'll be able to give you a much better, accurate idea of how much things are going to cost to get done. Once that's done, you need to be figuring out the rental figures. So for me, I'd be looking at local comparables, like-for-like properties within a roughly about half a mile radius. Rental properties don't come on that often, and so it's quite difficult to get like-for-like properties really close to the area, but you want to be looking roughly in about half a mile radius, what are like-for-like properties renting for. And then also I'd speak to 3 letting agents, not just one. Don't just speak to one person, speak to 3 letting agents and be asking them, give them the same description of the property and ask them, once the property was done up, how much do they think they'll be able to rent it for, and just take an average of the 3. Once you've got those figures, you're able to then run your numbers, actually do the calculation. And if you want, you can download our free deal calculator in the description below. You can access it through the Property Investment Playbook completely for free. The next step is to actually negotiate, and negotiate well. Negotiation is one of those things, right, where it's probably the only time in your entire life that you can sit down, have a conversation with somebody, and within seconds, save yourself tens of thousands of pounds. Negotiation is key. Make sure you get it right. If you want help with negotiating the price, one of the things you can do is work with your builder to figure out how much a thing's going to cost to fix, and also use that as a way to justify a reduction in the purchase price. Once you've negotiated the right price, you've got the offer accepted, you want to be instructing your solicitors. Call around, find a solicitor that comes recommended. I would say recommended solicitors are always better. Just have a conversation with them and instruct them. What that basically means is just call them up and say, we want you to represent us, and they'll get the ball rolling. From there, the solicitors will send out your initial documentation and paperwork that you can sign to formally instruct them, and you send that back to them. You could do that by email or post, depending on the solicitor that you're working with. Step 14 is to pay your solicitor for searches. Now, you can pay for searches, or you could pay for an indemnity policy to indemnify you against getting searches. Essentially, it's up to you. If you indemnify the searches, there's a bit more risk to it, but it speeds up the process by about 2 or 3 weeks. If you get searches and you've got that time, just pay for the searches. It costs a bit more than indemnifying it, but if you want to make sure that you have a fully comprehensive purchase and you know that everything's been covered, all stones have been looked under, then make sure you get your searches. Step 15 is set yourself a reminder to chase your solicitors every single week. Now, a lot of solicitors will complain about people mithering them and bothering them, but that's because they need to be mithered and they need to be bothered. Solicitors will often, very often, just sit on a case until they get a nudge. So by you putting in a reminder once a week, it's giving them that nudge every week to just say, where are things up to, what are we waiting on, and is there anything that I can do to help push this along further? Next is contact your finance broker. You've probably spoken to them already because you've been working out what you can get with your mortgage in principle or your provisional terms on your finance. So just give them a call, instruct them, and get them going. Again, same sort of thing. They'll send you paperwork, you sign it, send it back to them. If you're getting something like a mortgage, then your next step would be to introduce the mortgage broker to the estate agents, if there is an estate agent involved, or direct to the seller, because you want them to be able to coordinate the lender sending out a valuation. So just make that introduction there. It makes it much simpler for them to just communicate and organise that between themselves. You then also want to be introducing, as a next step, your broker to your solicitor, because your solicitor is going to be the one who draws down the funds from the lender. So an introduction there is important. Just do an email to copy them both in to the same thread and let them do their work. Step 20, you can instruct an independent surveyor. Now, you could just use a website, like a comparison site. You could use something like hoa.org.uk, something like that. You want to be getting an independent surveyor, and it's up to you whether you go for a level 1, 2 or 3 survey. That's totally your choice, but I would get an independent surveyor to go around and have a look at the property. Now, at this stage, around this point, stage number 21, if you've not already had your builder go around, then get your builder to go around. If they've just had a quick scan, then maybe get them to go around again and do a proper in-depth quote and get them booked in to have a look at the property so that they know exactly what it is that they've got to work with. After that, your builder should be able to get you a clear quote and also a schedule of works. Make sure you get both of these from your builder so that you've got an idea of what things are going to cost, an itemized list of this is what I'm paying for, this is what I'll be getting, and also the schedule of works, which is a document that they can put up to say this is what will get done when, and so you can see a timeline of what the project will be. After that, you move to step 23, which is to just get a contract signed. If a builder's got a contract, you can use that, but I'd recommend getting your own contract and getting the builder to sign it. And essentially a contract will just say, based on the quote that you've given me and the schedule of works that you've given me, you'll be working to that price and that time frame, and so on. Speak to a solicitor if you need help, but you can get plenty of contracts online. JCT contracts is what they can be known as, essentially like construction and renovation contracts, to help you make sure that everybody knows what their roles and responsibilities are, how much you're paying, when the project's going to get delivered by, and it's just signed and secured. Step number 24 is sign your TR1 when the solicitors send it through to you. One of the things that people always do is they get a contract sent to them by a solicitor and then they just sit on it, and then they wonder why it takes ages to get things moving quickly. It's like, the paperwork is with you, get it signed. So what I would always say to people is get the contract. Once it's through, just immediately sign it. You usually will get a witness involved, so get a witness to sign it as well, and then post it back to them. I always send a scanned copy to my solicitor first and then post it as well, and I'll post it first class, special delivery, signed for thing, so that it goes to them the next day and it goes to them directly and it's tracked and they have to sign for it to receive it. The next step is, once you've got your offer in place, your finance offer, what you want to do is make sure you schedule in your independent legal advice. Your ILA is what it can be often known as, is essentially an independent solicitor to say, here is the risk that you're taking on by taking on this loan. It's compulsory pretty much for every single purchase when it comes to finance, so make sure you get it done quick. Once that's all done, you can then send your funds through to the solicitor, so it's with them in their client account, ready to go just before the funds can get drawn down. At that stage, you then want to be making sure that you're agreeing an exchange date and a completion date with the seller or with the agent, and that all parties are on the same page of when you're going to be exchanging and when you're going to be completing. Before you exchange and complete, make sure you get building insurance on the property. It's one of the things that I got told to do by my solicitor the very first time I purchased something. Not all solicitors remind you to do this, by the way, so I was lucky. So I knew from that point on, every single time I buy a property, I need to make sure building insurance is in place. As soon as you exchange, you're responsible for that property, and as soon as you complete, it's yours. It is absolutely yours. Keys are in your hand, and so if you're not insured and the building burns down, it's going to be a bit of a difficult situation. Next is, on the day of exchange and completion, just remind your solicitors that you give them authority to exchange and complete so that they are ready to do so. Once you've exchanged and completed, you can then go and collect your keys from whoever's holding them, whether it's the seller or the agent or the solicitors. One of the things that I always like to do as well is, because I get builders to work on most of my sites, is when I collect the keys, I'll get another spare cut, I'll get a lockbox installed at the property and pop that spare key in there with a code so that the builders can use that. And I'll take a key home with me. And then the final step really is just celebrate. Have a little party. This is one of the things that I struggle to do and struggle to remember to do, is when I complete on a purchase, I'm so busy going like, we've now bought this, let's get on with it, let's renovate it, let's get the tenants in, and now let's move on to the next one, and just here, there and everywhere. But remember to just actually stop and celebrate, because you've bought a house and this is really exciting, and make the most of it. Now, if you've got to the end of this video and it sounds like quite a lot of work involved in just the purchase side of things, let alone everything else, then you can actually get help from us. We work with investors all over the world actually to invest in UK property and invest for you to make it as passive as possible and as hands-off as possible. So if that's something you're interested in, click the link in the description and you can book in a call with me. However, if you're excited about the prospect of investing for yourself, watch this video here about how I will be investing my money in 2025 to make the most money possible this year.